In the news tonight, His Majesty the King attends the 4th Nuclear Security Summit in Washington and holds meetings on the sidelines of the gathering. The U.S. President warns of a persistent and evolving threat of nuclear terrorism and urges world leaders at the 4th Nuclear Security Summit to do more to safeguard nuclear facilities. And 8 agencies say conditions for refugees in Greece are worsening and arrival numbers are rising, while the safeguards needed to start returning some of the refugees to Turkey next week are not yet in place. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty King Abdullah joined world leaders at the 2016 Nuclear Security Summit in Washington. The summit aims to discuss international measures to enhance nuclear safety in the world and efforts to stop assailants from using radioactive materials. King Abdullah attended the opening session in the presence of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein. The summit focused on means to enhance capabilities of countries to enable them to detect and prevent the smuggling of nuclear material. And on the sidelines of the summit, His Majesty held 2 separate meetings with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Dutch Prime Minister Marco Rutte. The meetings, attended by His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein, highlighted the importance of boosting international cooperation to curb the spread of nuclear materials across borders. They also focused on the need to preserve nuclear security and take the necessary measures to enhance global peace and security. U.S. President Barack Obama opened the Global Nuclear Summit in Washington, a high-level diplomatic process that started and will end on his watch. With less than 10 months left in office to follow through on one of his signature foreign policy initiatives, Obama is convening leaders from more than 50 countries for his 4th and final Nuclear Security Summit. Chairing the opening session, Obama called for coordinated initiatives from political institutions and groups to enhance nuclear security. The U.S. President noted that more nations are cooperating to prevent the smuggling of nuclear material. He warned of a persistent threat of terrorists getting their hands on nuclear materials despite progress in reducing such risks and called on world leaders to do more to safeguard nuclear facilities. Obama said terrorists will find it harder to obtain nuclear materials thanks to a key treaty ratified by 102 nations that will come into force in the coming weeks. Obama said the world has measurably reduced the risk from nuclear weapons, but the threat continues to exist.
As a result, we expect that the treaty will enter into force in the coming weeks, giving us more tools that we need to work together in the event of theft of nuclear material or an attack on a nuclear facility. Several of the nations here made the extra effort in recent weeks to complete this process in time for this summit. Everybody has been participating, and by working together, our nations have made it harder for terrorists to get their hands on nuclear material. We have measurably reduced the risk. But as we discussed at last night's dinner, the threat of nuclear terrorism persists and continues to evolve. Fortunately, because of our coordinated efforts, no terrorist group has succeeded thus far in obtaining a nuclear weapon or a dirty bomb made of radioactive materials.
Here at home, Royal Jordanian Air Force pilot Major Mu'adh Bani Faris was laid to rest today at his hometown of Ashrafiyya in the Kura district in Irbid. His Majesty King Abdullah's military advisor and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mish'al Zabin, and high-ranking army officers and senior officials attended the funeral. Major Bani Faris was killed and another pilot injured when their Hawk aircraft crashed yesterday during a training mission. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov dismissed as dirty leaks reports on an alleged agreement between Russia and the United States on the future of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The Arabian newspaper Al-Hayat reported yesterday that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry had told several Arab countries that Russia and the U.S. reached an understanding on the future of Syria's peace process, including Assad's departure to another country at some unspecified stage. The Kremlin, however, denied the report as untrue.
And in these dirty leaks, which distort reality, we obviously see Washington's inability to force some of its allies in the region and in Europe to fulfill UN Security Council resolutions and to give the Syrian people a sovereign right, which already belongs to them, to decide their destiny as well as who will be their leader.
The U.S. military said it had started training dozens of Syrian opposition fighters to battle Daesh as part of a revamped program that aims to avoid mistakes that doomed its first training effort in Turkey last year. U.S. Army Colonel Steve Warren, spokesman for the U.S.-led coalition fighting the terrorist group, said training for the first group of recruits includes how to identify targets for U.S.-led coalition airstrikes to allow coalition aircraft to better strike Daesh from the air. Warren said no Syrian fighters had yet graduated from the program, and the Pentagon declined to say where the training is being conducted. Meanwhile, a Dutch study showed that French, Germans and Britons make up the highest number of foreign fighters in the Syrian rebel ranks from European countries, but Belgium is the largest contributor in proportion to its population. The study, prepared by the Hague-based International Center for Counterterrorism, said in total up to 4,294 Europeans had gone to fight in Syria, of whom 30% had since returned and 14% were confirmed dead. The study added that 17% of them were female and 23% were converts to Islam, and most came from urban areas or peripheral suburbs. In Iraq, at least 3 Kurdish policemen were killed in a suicide car bomb in the town of Mahmoud in South Iraqi Kurdistan. According to a Kurdish security source, one suicide car bomb went off in front of Mahmoud Governorate building where 3 policemen were killed, while 3 other vehicles went off in the outskirts of the city in attacks aimed at Kurdish Peshmerga forces, but there were no reported casualties. Daesh claimed responsibility for the bombings. At least 10 people were injured in overnight clashes between migrants inside a holding center on the Greek island of Chios. Police sources said 2 of the wounded were stabbed, but it is unclear what sparked the clashes. Many migrants said they did not want to return to Turkey under the new EU deal, which takes effect on Monday, in which migrants who do not qualify for asylum will be sent back to Turkey from Greece. Despite an agreement between the EU and Turkey to stem the flow of those seeking refuge, 128 migrants arrived on the island of Lesbos today, and another 211 arrived on Chios Island. Meanwhile, the United Nations called for legal safeguards to be in place before refugees are returned to Turkey under an agreement with the European Union, while warning that conditions in Greece are deteriorating. Days before Turkey is due to begin taking back illegal migrants from Greece, neither side is fully ready, with officials scrambling to be able to make at least a symbolic start as new arrivals rise. UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, said about 51,000 refugees and migrants are in Greece, with more arrivals taking place on a daily basis. The agency, which says 9 in 10 refugees arriving on rickety boats are fleeing for their lives, has voiced concerns that Turkey may deport refugees en masse to Afghanistan, Iran and Iraq, where they could face persecution or violence.
So today we're urging the parties to the recent EU and Turkey agreement on refugees and migrants to ensure that all safeguards are in place before any returns begin. This is in light of continued serious gaps in both countries.
Internationally renowned Iraqi-British architect Dame Zaha Hadid, whose designs included the London Aquatic Centre used in the 2012 Summer Olympics, has died at the age of 65. Hadid had contracted bronchitis earlier this week and suffered a sudden stroke yesterday while being treated in a Miami hospital. Zaha was the first woman to receive the Royal Institute of British Architects Gold Medal in recognition of her work. Her projects also include the Maxim Museum in Rome, the Haydar Aliyev Center in Baku, and a condominium along Manhattan's High Line Park. She also designed one of the stadiums that will take center stage at the Qatar World Cup in 2022. Apple is celebrating its 40th anniversary today. On April 1st, 1976, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne founded Apple Computers in the garage of Jobs' parents' house. Wozniak built the Apple I and Apple II computers that helped revolutionize personal computing. He built the first Apple computer by hand, but it was Steve Jobs that became the central figure in transforming Apple into one of the world's largest and most envied companies. Jobs reinvented the technology world 4 or 5 times, first with the Apple II, then with the Macintosh, the iPod, and the iPhone. Over the past 40 years, the company has produced the Apple Mac, various incarnations of the Apple iPhone, iPad, and more recently, the Apple Watch. For April Fool's Day, carmaker Nissan decided to have some fun with its brand name, releasing a video in which its name gets mixed up with companies with similar names. In the video, a Nissan staff member playing the role of a news anchor reports on a flying object created by Nissan, a noodle maker Nissin, that makes an unexpected landing at the headquarters of conglomerate Nissan. The flying object, which looks like a giant instant noodle bowl, is called Uso, which in Japanese means lie. And that was the clue that the entire production is an April Fool's Day joke.
Mistakenly landed at Nissan's logistics center in Fukui, Japan, some 400 kilometers west of Yokohama. Sources attribute the Uso's confusion to mispronunciation of Nissan and Nissan.
Nissan.
Locals have gone crazy for the noodles. For a limited time only, the Uso will be orbiting Nissan.
Real Madrid face La Liga leaders Barcelona tomorrow in El Clásico. Real boss Zinedine Zidane said there is no added pressure on him or his players before the match at the Nou Camp. Leaders Barcelona are 10 points clear of their fierce rivals and closing in on a third title in 4 seasons. Real are third in the table with 8 games left, behind Atletico Madrid in second place. Barcelona head into El Clásico on a 39-game unbeaten run, stretching back to October. The 2016 European Championship trophy kicked off in its France tour today, starting with Saint-Denis near Paris. The cup was exhibited in front of the Basilica of Saint-Denis, a few kilometers away from the Stade de France, which will host the Euro 2016's first match on June 6 between France and Romania. The trophy will travel around France on a special high-speed train. The competition will take place between June 10 and July 10 and is being hosted by France for the third time since its inception in 1958. It is also the first time that the final stages will comprise 24 teams instead of 16 previously. And finally, it remains relatively cool tonight in most regions, but pleasant in the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea. Temperatures will further rise tomorrow to 5 degrees Celsius above their seasonal average. Therefore, it will be warm across the country and the winds a southeasterly moderate. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a relatively hot day tomorrow with northerly moderate and gusty winds and slightly choppy seas. Here now is the temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King attends the 4th Nuclear Security Summit in Washington and holds meetings on the sidelines of the gathering. The U.S. President warns of a persistent and evolving threat of nuclear terrorism and urges world leaders at the 4th Nuclear Summit to do more to safeguard nuclear facilities. And 8 agencies say conditions for refugees in Greece are worsening and arrival numbers rising, while the safeguards needed to start returning some of the refugees to Turkey next week are not yet in place. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Tuqan. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.